I want to talk about a concept I heard about a few years ago called signal versus noise. Signal versus noise sort of became famous with Steve Jobs and a few other entrepreneurs at the time. The concept is everything that you're not good at, that you're not passionate about, that doesn't move the needle in your business, make you money, is noise. And so those tasks in your company should be farmed out. They should be delegated to someone else in your company, in your operation. But most entrepreneurs wind up doing almost everything in their business in the beginning. The logic is that you're just starting out, you need to learn about the business, and therefore you want to do it yourself. But the problem with that is a slippery slope. And so I learned about this concept early on in our rental arbitrage journey. My first year, I acquired 18 properties. In the second year, 27 properties. And within 2 years, I acquired 46 properties, earning over $200,000 per month, largely because I delegated. So I delegated most of the admin tasks, the customer support tasks, hiring of housekeepers and training, the copywriting and all that, while I focused on acquisition and market research. I focused on the tasks that I was good at, that I liked, that made us more money, that grew the business. And so the concept signal versus noise is relative, right? So what could be in a signal for you in the beginning of your entrepreneurial journey, later could be noise. Here's an example. Brian Chesky famously is another signal versus noise advocate. He talks about delegation all the time and focusing on strategy and steering the ship of Airbnb. In the very beginning, Airbnb's website was a bit clunky. Hosts had difficulty uploading photos to it, and therefore the photos were not so great. And the Airbnb crew learned early on that people made their booking decisions largely on good photos. So therefore they wanted to incentivize proper photo taking and uploading. And so they fixed the website, but that still didn't really help the hosts from uploading good photos. So they would literally go to their hosts and knock on the doors and offer to take photos. He was not a professional photographer. I believe he actually even borrowed the equipment, but he would do that in the beginning to kind of move the needle in his business. So do you think that photo taking or anything personal relations to guests is a signal versus noise for Brian these days? Obviously, it's going to be noise. In the very beginning, it was signal. So in the very beginning of your business, perhaps the first few weeks, find out what moves the needle. Most of the time, that's sales. Most of the time, that's things like marketing. But even within an acquisition in what we do, quickly move those over to a signal versus noise ratio column. So here is my signal to noise ratio formula. So let's say in the very beginning, you're doing 80% of noise to signal task. That's basically how most entrepreneurs work. Actually, if they're lucky, sometimes it's 100%. But let's go 80%. So 80% of the time, you're focusing on almost all the tasks in the business that aren't really things that you should be doing. Things that are admin related, listing your property, getting photos taken. Actually, some people even take their photos, things like that. Pricing, design, buying the supplies in the properties. So let's put those all in column one, let's say, in the noise column. And the signal are the 20% of the time things that you need to do, like you're contacting landlords to acquire properties, you're doing market research on AirDNA, you're doing things that you must do. Here's the thing, the moment you hire a virtual assistant and they start doing one task or another, they start moving from your noise column to the signal column. Say, for instance, they list your property now, which was only on Airbnb, on Booking.com and Expedia and Furnished Finder and Google Travel. Those tasks that used to take you hours a week to do, and now it moved into the noise column. And then the list of other things that that virtual assistant can then do for you greatly increases the amount of time that you have to focus on the things that move the needle, the things that you're good at, the things that make you more money. So now let's say you were at 80-20 ratio. You're now at 100% noise because you're training and managing the virtual assistant. But here's the good news. Not soon after that training period, your noise to signal ratio should drop down to around 50 or 60%. So you went from 80% noise down to 60, or let's say even optimistically down to 50%. And so right, in the very beginning, management is tedious and it can be time consuming, but if it's done correctly, and if the delegation of the tasks are done correctly, then your ratio goes from, say, 50-50. And so not soon after my rental arbitrage journey, I learned about the signal to noise ratio, didn't pay too much attention to it in regards to delegation. I was really just focusing on hiring virtual assistants. And I learned quickly that the task in which I was delegating took me quicker than the management part of it. And so I think that's the conundrum most entrepreneurs get in. They think, well, it's going to take me a long time to delegate. How do I know that the virtual assistant is going to do as good of a job as I could do? And that's really what the training process is for. So I have another video on how we train our VAs, our virtual assistants, through a 5-day, 6-day training period. Here are the signal to noise columns that I see in a rental arbitrage business. So step one is you're going to do market research using AirDNA and Rentometer. AirDNA.co is a market research tool that allows you to determine what other hosts are earning in a given market. So you can type in Miami and see all the list of submarkets in the Miami area, Miami Beach, South Beach, all of that. You're going to see a list of those. And then you're going to average out that data. For instance, in a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment, you're going to average out that data over the last 24 months. Let's say it's $6,000 gross revenue. Now you just need to find out what the rent is in that market for a very similar property. In a vacant 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment, for instance, let's say hopefully it's under 50%. And so that task, I think, should be done by you in the beginning. And then the acquisitions process, which is my second step of my rental arbitrage flywheel, is going out and getting that property. 2 tasks that you should be doing yourself. But let's say once you get your property, most of the operational duties in the business can be done by a virtual assistant if they're trained properly. Not from a property management company. Don't do that. They charge 20-25% of gross revenue, and farming out the core part of your operations of your business really doesn't make you a business anymore. And so doing that yourself. And the other thing is, don't do it yourself, right? To my point earlier. And here's another big bottleneck that occurs in a rental business, whether you buy or arbitrage, is that most hosts, most owners and arbitragers wind up doing the duties themselves, and therefore they get stuck in 1 or 2 properties. You can quickly scale if you start delegating and focusing on acquisitions and market research. Once you get the properties, turn them over to your team. So here are the tasks that you're going to now delegate. So create a column. You can use a regular Excel or a Google spreadsheet. And in column A, the signal, if you will, are market research and acquisition. Market research are, does the property 2x rent? Meaning, if I get an apartment for $2,500, can I earn at least $5,000 gross monthly revenue on Airbnb and other short-term and mid-term rental platforms? And I have an entire series of videos on how to conduct the market research, so watch those. Step 2 is contacting the apartment buildings, largely through hot pads, on getting them to agree to our business model. And I have another video on acquisitions about that. I'm not here to explain those 2 now, but those are 2 tasks you should be doing. Once you acquire your property and get it under contract, then you can quickly turn this over to your operational team, a virtual assistant. 90% of what goes on in the day-to-day operations of a short and mid-term rental business is communication, meaning the person doing the communicating can be anywhere in the world. And for us, that's in the Philippines. We use VAs in the Philippines. They've been an integral part of our process for a long time. And so they're able to handle the 3 categories of hosting, which is managing your turnovers and housekeepers, answering inquiries from people who are not yet your guests, and then managing those people once they become guests, communicating with them, extending their stay, helping them get something they want in the unit. Those are 3 things that can be done via communications 90% of the time. And the 10% of the time, someone that needs to be in market, someone typically like the housekeeper, that can help us in the units. And so let's focus on those tasks right now and see what those are. So in your column B, they will be anything related to communication. So we use a property management software, $40 per month per property. And so with that one app, you can then, your virtual assistant then can connect all of your listings. They can list your properties on all the platforms, Booking.com, Expedia, Furnish Finder, Airbnb, Vrbo, Google Travel, sites like that. Then they can connect your pricing software. We use a tool called PriceLabs, and then connect them all through one app. And then when you get an inquiry or a guest sends you a message, the VA from overseas can respond accordingly. Now we have 900 canned messages, protocols, if you will, on what the VA should do in any given situation. So create your protocols. Now that is something that in the beginning will be your signal. So let's move that to column A. But once that gets going, the VA is responsible for all the communication so you can sleep at night, so you can focus on your next deal, so you can grow your business and steer your ship. And so that's a signal to noise ratio. But let's expand in column B. Column B should then be pricing. It should be, once you set your base price, the virtual assistant should manage the pricing software. Everything from length of stay discounts and other what we call rule sets. And let's go further down that list. Supplies, inventory, managing of the spreadsheets. If a guest breaks a house rule or overstays or smokes or does something like that, there are recourses in our house rules. So they're going to have to create and upload the house rules to your various platforms and then manage and audit all of the properties on the online platforms, uploading images, communicating manually to guests. So we have automatic messages. They're going to have to upload all of those automatic messages, check-in details, check-out details, tip sheets, restaurant recommendations, all of those things. They're going to write those and they're going to send them to edit. Now, during the operations of the business, if you are the manager, meaning the virtual assistant in the hierarchy of our business is the supervisor, the housekeeper is the person in the unit, and then there is a manager somewhere. If that in the beginning is you, issues that you will deem management issues, things like safety or refunds should be escalated to you. Let's move those into the signal column. So management issues, anything related to the apartment unit, like refunds or safety issues to you. 90% of the rest of the time, they're going to handle the day-to-day. And now, what would be overwhelming for a single person to manage a 24-hour business like the short-term rental business can be, it could be the most active business model, is an inherently scalable passive business model. Therefore, create a signal to noise ratio column and find what your signal is in your business. Now, here's another part. Don't want to complicate the explanation of this. There are things, and what I would consider signal aren't just things that you enjoy. You want to focus on things that you're very good at, that actually moves your business ahead, even things you feel like you're driven to. So create a task list every day for yourself on things that you have to do, things that you may not want to do, but you know you have to do every day. And don't do any of those other tasks, any of the noise tasks in your business until you accomplish those. And yeah, sure, if you get those accomplished at the end of it, then yeah, you can move it to these other things that you think you need to do. But then delegate. Now, it's easy to someone that's doing really well, that's earning lots of money to delegate all their duties to different people. But you can start with your VA and then your second virtual assistant. And then over time, the things that you feel that are your signal, you can then reevaluate to determine if someone else can do it for you and focus on the core parts of what any CEO should be in their business, which is strategy, which is focusing on where the business is going and then more sales and more business being done. So I hope you understood the signal to noise ratio as it relates to a rental arbitrage business and how I was able to start, grow, and automate my rental arbitrage business from 0 units to over 60 properties in a short period of time.